Wait, what? My voice rang out across the dining room, bouncing off the mahogany walls. You're making Ryan the CEO? I looked around the table, expecting anyone, to laugh, to tell me this was some sort of joke. But my parents' faces were set in stone, and my brother Ryan was smirking like he'd won the lottery. In a way, he had. Sweetheart, Mom said with an exasperated sigh. Ryan has the leadership qualities needed for this. You're too rigid, too serious. Dad nodded as if that settled everything. You're great with numbers, Danielle, but you don't inspire people the way Ryan does. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Ryan? Inspiring? The same guy who had never held a real job in his life. The one who spent more time partying than working. The one who had burned through his trust fund twice over, only to come crawling back home for more. And this was the guy they were handing our family's business to? The company our grandfather built with his bare hands? But I've been working at Sterling Home Essentials for years, I protested. I helped restructure our supply chain. I negotiated new contracts. You're a good worker, Dad cut in. But Ryan's a natural leader. You should be happy for him. Ryan stretched back in his chair, lacing his fingers behind his head. Yeah, Danny, don't take it so personally. You can still be involved, just, in a support role. Support role. The words felt like a slap. I had given my blood, sweat, and tears to this company late nights, early mornings, running numbers while my so-called leader of a brother partied his way through his 20s. I turned to my mother, hoping for some kind of lifeline. Mom, please. She just patted my hand like I was a child. You should focus on something else, sweetheart. Maybe start a little side business of your own. Something inside me snapped. You want me to start my own business? I said, my voice dangerously calm. Fine. But don't come crawling back when Ryan runs this place into the ground. Ryan snorted. Relax, sis. I got this. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. Without another word, I walked out of that dining room, out of that house, and out of their lives. At least, that's what I thought. Because years later, they would come knocking on my door. And this time, I would be the one calling the shots. Walking out of that house felt like ripping off a bandage. But instead of relief, all I felt was rage. Not the kind of rage that makes you scream and throw things. No, this was the kind that settled deep in your bones. The kind that fuels every late night, every early morning, every ounce of effort you pour into proving someone wrong. I had spent my entire life playing by the rules, following the path my parents laid out for me. I worked tirelessly for Sterling Home Essentials, only to be discarded like an afterthought. And for what? So Ryan could waltz in, take my work, and pretend he knew what he was doing? Fine. If they thought I was only good enough for a side business, then I'd build one so successful they'd choke on their words. I spent weeks brainstorming, scribbling notes in my journal, researching markets. What could I create that was truly mine? And then the idea hit me. For years, I had studied supply chains, product sourcing, and customer trends. I knew what worked and what didn't. I had personally seen the rise of eco-friendly, affordable, high-quality home products, a market my family's outdated company had completely ignored. They still relied on old-school wholesalers, never bothering to adapt to the new wave of direct-to-consumer e-commerce. What if I launched my own brand? A home goods line focused on sustainability, affordability, and modern design. Not the cheap, mass-produced junk Sterling Home Essentials stocked, but something fresh. A brand that made homes beautiful without breaking the bank. There was only one problem. I was broke. Unlike Ryan, I didn't have a trust fund or wealthy parents willing to throw money at me. Everything I had was what I could scrape together from my savings. I took a deep breath and did the scariest thing I had ever done. I cashed out my retirement fund. It wasn't much, just enough to cover my first round of product samples and a small batch of inventory. I worked day and night designing my first collection, minimalist, high-quality, eco-friendly home essentials. The factory in Vietnam agreed to produce my designs in small batches, and I found a reliable logistics partner. I built my website from scratch, taught myself digital marketing, and launched an online store. And then I waited. I should have known my family wouldn't support me. When I casually mentioned my idea at a cousin's wedding, Ryan practically choked on his champagne. "Wait, let me get this straight," he said between laughs. "You're selling what?" "Bamboo cutting boards and organic dish towels, online." My mother shook her head with a pitying smile. "Danielle, honey, I know you're upset about the business, but this isn't realistic." Dad just sighed. "We have connections, sweetheart. If you really wanted to start a business, you should have come to us. But e-commerce? It's not stable. That's why we focus on traditional retail." I clenched my jaw. "You mean that failing retail business you just handed over to Ryan?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "Whatever. Look, hope it works out for you, Danny, but let's be honest, you don't have the experience to make this work." I let them laugh. I let them dismiss me. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. I knew they were stuck in the past. I knew that while they mocked online businesses, the world was shifting under their feet. I knew that the very thing they scoffed at was about to change everything. The first month was brutal. I ran ads that barely converted. My website traffic was low. Orders trickled in one at a time, just enough to keep me from panicking. I packed every box myself, handwrote thank you notes, and obsessively tracked customer feedback. And then it happened. One night, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. A social media influencer with 2 million followers had posted about my brand. She had ordered one of my products, loved it, and raved about it to her audience. By morning, I had 5,000 new orders. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This was it. I barely slept for the next 2 weeks, scrambling to fulfill orders, managing the flood of emails, trying to keep up with the explosion of interest. I reinvested every cent into inventory, hired a fulfillment company, and scaled faster than I ever imagined. 3 months later, my little side business had made its first $1 million in sales. And just as I had predicted, Ryan's company was falling apart. Ryan had always been good at talking, smooth, confident, able to convince anyone he knew exactly what he was doing, even when he had no idea. But there's one thing charm can't fix: numbers. And numbers don't lie. The first sign of trouble at Sterling Home Essentials came faster than I expected. At first, I only heard whispers from old coworkers, complaints about delayed shipments, unhappy suppliers, and confused leadership. Employees were frustrated. Ryan had grand ideas, but zero execution. He wanted the company to be trendy, but instead of modernizing operations, he spent a fortune on expensive marketing campaigns that made no sense. Then came the price hikes. Desperate to increase revenue without actually improving the business, Ryan raised prices on everything. And I mean everything. Even the cheapest, most basic products suddenly cost 40% more. Customers noticed. Sales plummeted. The company tried to backpedal, but by then, the damage was done. Their reputation was sinking fast. I should have felt bad. I should have felt some kind of sympathy, watching my family's legacy unravel because they had placed their trust in the wrong child. But all I felt was satisfaction. Because while Ryan's business crumbled, mine was exploding. After my brand went viral, things moved fast. I reinvested every dollar, expanding my product line, improving supply chains, and locking in better deals with manufacturers. I built a rock-solid customer base through word of mouth and real marketing. Unlike Ryan, I knew how to read the market, not just throw money at flashy ads. 6 months in, I hit $5 million in sales. By the end of the year, $12 million. I wasn't just running a business. I was running an empire. And then came the phone call. I was in my office, going through new partnership proposals, when my phone buzzed. Dad. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the best of me. Danielle. Dad's voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, smirking. "Oh, about what?" A long pause. Then he sighed. "It's about the company. We're struggling." I said nothing, letting the silence stretch. He cleared his throat. "Ryan's had some difficulties. The market has changed and we—" I cut him off. "No, Dad. The market didn't change. You just put an incompetent CEO in charge." More silence. Then, quieter, "We need your help." There it was. The thing I never thought I'd hear. The man who told me Ryan was a natural leader, now begging me to fix his mistake. I should have hung up right then and there. But instead, I smiled. Because an idea had just formed. A deliciously cruel idea. The next morning, I called for a meeting. Not at my father's failing office, but at my corporate headquarters. I wanted them to see just how far I'd come. When my parents and Ryan arrived, their expressions were priceless. My office was everything Sterling Home Essentials wasn't: sleek, modern, and thriving. Employees bustled with purpose, every inch of the place radiating success. Mom looked around, stunned. Wow, Danielle, this is impressive. Dad cleared his throat. Yes, very impressive. But let's get to the point. Ryan, though, he was sulking. Arms crossed, jaw tight, refusing to make eye contact. I took my time, savoring the moment. So, I finally said, let me get this straight. You're asking me, the daughter you dismissed, the one whose business you mocked, to come fix your mess. Dad hesitated. Well, when you put it that way, that is the way it is. I snapped. Ryan rolled his eyes. Look, just name your price, okay? We need you to bring the company back on its feet. I laughed. I actually laughed. Oh, Ryan, you don't get it, do you? I leaned forward. I don't need your company. I built my own. And guess what? It's bigger than yours ever was. Ryan's face turned red. That's not true. I pulled out my phone, opened my financial dashboard, and turned the screen toward them. $12,340,000 in revenue. Mom gasped. Dad paled. Ryan? He looked like he wanted to throw up. That's impossible, he muttered. I grinned. It's not just possible, it's my reality. Dad exhaled sharply. Danielle, please. We're running out of time. The bank is threatening to seize assets. I tapped my chin, pretending to think. All right, I'll help. Their faces lit up. But I wasn't finished. On one condition. They leaned forward. Anything. I smiled sweetly. You work for me. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? I shrugged. You need jobs, don't you? Well, I have openings. You can work here. But not as executives. I leaned in, my voice dropping. You can start as unpaid interns. The silence was deafening. Ryan shot up. You've got to be joking. I shrugged. Take it or leave it. Mom looked at Dad, desperate. Ryan's jaw clenched. They had no choice. Fine, Dad finally said, voice shaking with shame. I stood up, extending my hand. Welcome to your new reality. Hope you enjoy fetching coffee. The first day of their internship was pure gold. Ryan, my parents' golden child, their hand-picked CEO, was now standing in front of me in my office, wearing a cheap button-up shirt that he clearly wasn't used to ironing himself. His usual smugness was gone. He was glaring at the floor, arms crossed like a sulking teenager. My father, once so proud and authoritative, stood stiffly beside him. My mother, who had spent her life believing Ryan could do no wrong, looked like she might faint. I let the silence drag. Let them feel the weight of what they had become. So, I finally said, leaning back in my chair, let's talk about your new responsibilities. Ryan scoffed. This is humiliating. You're doing this just to mess with us. I smirked. No, Ryan. I'm doing this because it's what you deserve. But by all means, if you'd rather be unemployed, there's the door. He clenched his jaw, nostrils flaring. He hated this. And that made it even better. My father cleared his throat, forcing a strained smile. Danielle, honey, let's be reasonable. Surely there's a better use of our skills than menial work. I arched an eyebrow. Skills? You mean the ones that ran your business into the ground? A flicker of shame crossed his face, but he said nothing. All right then, I continued, picking up a sheet of paper. Here are your assignments. I handed each of them a printout. Ryan scanned his and immediately turned red. You want me to organize the warehouse? I nodded. That's right. We just expanded, and I need someone to do inventory checks. Since you're such a natural leader, I'm sure you can figure it out. Ryan looked like he wanted to throw the paper in my face. And what about us? My mother asked hesitantly. I smiled sweetly. Mom, I put you in customer service. Her eyes widened in horror. Customer service? That's right. I need someone to handle incoming complaints. Customers will be calling, emailing, and leaving reviews all day. Your job is to make sure they're happy. She looked physically ill. And Dad, I said, turning to him, you'll be handling supplier relations. You'll be responsible for cold calling manufacturers, negotiating rates, and making sure we never have delays. Dad blinked, processing. You want me to call suppliers? That's grunt work. I grinned. Exactly. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. Let's be honest. If Ryan had succeeded, you wouldn't be here right now. You'd still be patting his back, telling him how brilliant he is. You'd still be looking down on me like I was nothing. My father opened his mouth to argue, then hesitated. Because he knew I was right. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline of my success. The office buildings. The streets bustling with people carrying shopping bags, some of which contained my products. I had built something real. Something that mattered. Meanwhile, my parents had lost everything by betting on the wrong person. I turned back to them. You know what hurts the most? I said quietly. My mother blinked, swallowing hard. What? It's not the fact that you chose Ryan. It's not even the fact that you didn't believe in me. I exhaled sharply. It's the fact that when I walked away, you didn't care. Their faces fell. You didn't call. You didn't check in. You didn't even ask how I was doing. You just dismissed me, like I was an afterthought. A heavy silence stretched between us. I could see it in their eyes now, the guilt. The realization that they had burned this bridge long before I ever set it on fire. My father rubbed his temples. We thought you'd come back. That you'd fail and realize you needed us. I let out a bitter laugh. Wow, that says everything, doesn't it? My mother's voice was shaky. Danielle, we never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you? Her lips parted, but she had no answer. Because there wasn't one. I walked back to my desk and picked up a small stack of papers. Since you're looking for another chance, let me make you an offer, I said, tossing the papers in front of them. They hesitated before picking them up. My father's brows furrowed as he read. What is this? I smiled. A severance package. You resign from my company permanently, and in return, I make a generous one-time payout so you don't have to struggle. My mother's face twisted in shock. You're paying us to leave? That's right, I said smoothly. Because I don't trust you. And I don't want you involved in my business. My father's grip on the paper tightened. This is insulting. No, Dad. What was insulting was spending my whole life being treated like I wasn't good enough for you. My mother's eyes watered. Is this really what you want? I met her gaze. It's what I need. My father clenched his jaw, staring down at the papers for a long moment. Then finally, he let out a slow breath. Fine, he muttered. We'll take it. My mother's lips trembled, but she nodded. If this is what will make you happy, sweetheart, then we'll go. A pang of something, almost like sadness, hit me. This was the final goodbye. But I didn't stop them. Because I was done waiting for them to love me the way I deserved. They signed the papers, stood up, gave me one last lingering look. And then they left. I watched from my office window as they walked out. Out of my building. Out of my life. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I sat in my office long after they left, staring at the signed severance agreement on my desk. It was over. For years, I had wanted their approval. Their validation. I had wanted them to see me, to finally recognize that I was worth something. But now? Now, I realized something far more important. I didn't need them. I had built my own empire without their support. I had succeeded despite them, not because of them. And that was the greatest victory of all. In the weeks that followed, things settled into a new kind of normal. Ryan disappeared, no surprise there. Last I heard, he was bouncing between different failed startup ideas, still chasing easy money instead of doing real work. My parents moved out of state. They took my severance package and bought a smaller house somewhere quiet, far from the city. I didn't hear from them much after that. And honestly, I was fine with that. I was finally free from the weight of their expectations. No more waiting for approval. No more trying to prove myself. No more looking over my shoulder, wondering if I was enough. Because now I knew I was enough. With my family out of the picture, I threw myself into my company more than ever. And the best part? I didn't have to do it alone. Unlike my parents' business, where employees were treated like disposable workers, I built a team that mattered. Sarah, my logistics manager, had started as a warehouse assistant and worked her way up. Maria, my head of customer service, had been turned down by dozens of companies before I gave her a shot. I surrounded myself with people who actually cared, who believed in the vision, who knew that success wasn't about a last name, it was about hard work, integrity, and the willingness to adapt. And because of that, we didn't just grow. We thrived. A year later, I stood in a grand ballroom, the sound of applause echoing around me. My company had just been named fastest-growing e-commerce brand of the year. I stepped onto the stage, taking the award with steady hands. As I turned to the microphone, I took a deep breath. A few years ago, I was told I wasn't leadership material, that I was too rigid, too serious, that I wasn't the right fit for success. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I smiled. I'm standing here today because I refuse to believe that. Another round of applause. Success isn't about luck. It's not about charm. It's not about being born into the right family. I paused, letting my words sink in. Success is about persistence. It's about refusing to let people define you. It's about knowing your worth, even when no one else does. The applause erupted into a standing ovation. I stepped back, heart pounding. This was what I had always dreamed of. Not their approval, not their validation, but this moment, where I stood tall on my own. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's winning without them.